From this point of view, it is good for us to reconnoiter. When you see the Narrows, and you see that the sun sets on the distant horizon through the Narrows, then you have an illustration of the vastness of this calendar. We are in a calendar. It's not one hanging on your wall. It's a stand in, live in, experience, move around in calendar. Our average knowledge of astronomy is so poor. We look at the calendar and we think we live by the calendar. No, we live by the sun. For them, they worshiped the sun, the creators of this site. They were people of the sun. This was an intimate knowledge for them, such that they actually drew themselves to contain that characteristic. Ancient people used the horizon as their gauge, as their measuring tool, as their fixed location for date and time, such the motion of the sun is captured along the horizon. Unlike so many sites that have one or two significant alignments, this site has them all. It functions all year long. It functions continuously every day. As long as the sun is shining, you can get the motion of the sun from the Narrows of the Gap, which functions as a lens to project a shaft of light at sunset. And when that happens, you will gauge your year on any given day. So this particular story starts at this cairn. A cairn is a gathering of stones like this. It's a piling there to make a marker, a place of observation. If you were standing here on winter solstice, the sun would set between the two mountains of the Narrows of the Gap. If you were standing on top of the hill watching the sunset on that date, you would see the V of light point at this cairn. We have a glyph, a map-like glyph, that represents the traverse of the sun between the two solstice sunsets and the number of days it takes to make that traverse. So you have to come out of the mind of the ancient person who created the thing, and you have to come in to his method of encoding that whole phenomena into a given representation. And that's a big problem. Let me emphasize this. If a person is working from, living by, and totally in observation of the sun as a calendar, he must not just know where the sun is. He must carry with him a mental image of where the sun starts from and where it's going to end up and the direction of its travel. If that mental image is not contained, the calendar and knowing the position of the sun means nothing. But once it is inscribed, once it becomes a part of the rock, it exists for thousands of years, and it becomes a part of the culture. So that's the importance. This is not some maybe activity. This is some essential process that they had in making an adaptation to their environment. It is a layered site. What do I mean by layers? Well, history layers. Geology talks about the stratigraphy of time and the layers of history, ancient geologic history. In this case, it happens culturally. And so when the pioneers first came to this site, they were told by Wa Kera that they would come to a place in the Parowan Valley. They would go west of there and they would come out to where the mountain is split. At that point, there would be many petroglyphic inscriptions on the rock. He designated that place as being God's own house. The reason for that becomes very, very clear. And the reason is because at Parowan Gap, there are numerous events at this location which happen uncreate by man. They happened because a mountain was there. A break in the rock, a split in the mountain is there. A split in the rock becomes a face of Tobats. A cave becomes a perfect indicator of the May cross-quarter, August cross-quarter date. A split in the rock, or a division in the rock, a narrow split, becomes an indication of the moon's southernmost rise. Again and again and again, those things happen for the moon, for the sun, for Venus, and they happen repeatedly. So the Indians noticed this as the first step in the history of the Gap. They used it as a passage to the West Desert. When the pioneers came, they noticed the petroglyphs. They did not understand them. They weren't astronomers, and they weren't ethnographers. But as time went on, there was always a mystique about the Gap. And one of those mystiques had been revelations about certain appearances here. Others are biblical interpretations of the petroglyphs. And one is always associated with gold. So a legend has been derived. Where it came from and how it happened, I don't know. Somebody had a story about Mexican gold that was discovered and hidden here. And that's very unfortunate for the Gap, because things are being destroyed. Something like this little cairn would be taken that maybe there was gold. I hate to even say it, people. There will be somebody that assumes that there is gold under that cairn. And that's tragic. There's nothing but the information that that cairn contains, its place, its location, its significance in time. There is not gold here, and there's no sense to dig a hole here.